Okay, hello. Let the record show that I just spent like 8 attempts trying to get my hair in a ponytail, and that did not work. This is as good as it gets. I think there's still even a little thing right there, but you know, INTJ struggled. Also, didn't know how to do a ponytail until I was in 7th grade, so I was like 14 years old. Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. So in this video, I want to kind of compare the growth strategies for Myers-Briggs cognitive functions and the Enneagram. And they both have kind of trajectories for growth that they recommend. So I'm going to be specifically comparing the INTJ cognitive functions model for growth that I have personally used, and then also the growth the Enneagram 5 suggests that you use. So I know that not all 5s or INTJs, not all INTJs are 5s and all that, but there is a high correlation, and I personally am a 5, so I'm just gonna make a video kind of comparing the growth strategies for an INTJ and for an Enneagram 5. So yeah, so I am an Enneagram 5, wing 4, a social subtype, then sexual subtype. Self-preservation is not there. There's no self-preservation at all. So the first one that I want to talk about is actually the arrows. So according to Beatrice Chestnut, you first want to go against the arrow, and that kind of reclaims some power that you supposedly lost in childhood. And then after you've really developed that one, then you go with the arrow, and that should carry you throughout the rest of your life. So that's one model for personal growth. So in the case of the Enneagram 5, going against the arrow is toward an 8. And this really reminds me of developing TE. It's developing authority, being a lot more decisive, using your voice more. They can be known as being angry, but it's really using your power more so. I think all of the IJs can be too much in the background and really not using their power as much. So I think that's really important to develop first. And in the model of growth that I've been using for cognitive functions, they kind of recommend like going in order and growth that direction. So supposedly you naturally have always been good at your dominant function, NI, and then you need to work on TE, which is actually, you know, producing results, taking action, not getting so stuck in analysis paralysis, but actually accomplishing things, actually making measurable change towards your goals. So that's what I personally, like, I found a lot of benefit from that. I worked on TE solidly, just TE, for 5 years, and I'm definitely not done with it. There definitely is still more to do, but I worked on just TE solidly for 5 years. Then, according to Beatrice Chestnut, with the Enneagram, you then go with the arrow, which for a 5 is toward the 7. And the 7, to me, I get the vibes way different from an 8. It's a lot more playful, a lot more exploratory, a lot more fun. A lot of the 7s I know are very fun, a lot more extroverted. Or actually, both of these types seem fairly extroverted to me, 8s and 7s. To me, I kind of associate it with cognitive functions. It reminds me kind of of NE, and it also reminds me of SE. So I feel like this really aligns with cognitive functions where, you know, Enneagram 7s, kind of their issue is that they are running too much. You know, as soon as something is too stagnant, they are on to the next thing and they're kind of running away from their problems. That's kind of the opposite of what 5s do, and I think INTJs do. We can be physically very stagnant, not moving very much at all, not very expressive. Even if we're very excited about some things, we do not emote very much, like we just don't physically show things. And so I have started only for the last year, been working, so I worked on like 5 years on TE, and now I've worked on for the last year, I've worked on SE. It's shown basically a dramatic difference because it was basically shut off. Like I would say I was naturally operating with TE maybe at 60%. So to work on it, to get it up, I don't know what I'm at now. Still not even much higher probably. So there has been some growth. Whereas when I started with SE, it was like 0. So to now get it up to 50 is like, wow, that's a very marked difference. So you can really just, even though I'm still not even as high as I'm using TE, it's dramatic. It's much more dramatic. So that one seems a lot more fun to me. It seems like, wow, look at those results. You can really see those results. So I think TE kind of enjoys to see the results of how things are going. So yeah, so in that way, I think they kind of parallel. So now I'm going to go ahead and read through the levels of health according to the Enneagram. So you can take an Enneagram 5 and there are 9 levels of health. So I'll go through those and kind of show how that basically parallels developing cognitive functions. Okay, so I want to start down at level 9, so the least healthy Enneagram 5. So it says seeking oblivion. So to me that sounds like you are way in NI too much. They may commit suicide or have a psychotic break with reality. Deranged. Yeah, they just get crazy, these disorders, so they generally get down here. That's all I'll read for that one, because they just get into these disorders. Level 8, so a level healthier. Get obsessed, yet frightened by their threatening ideas, become horrified, delirious, and prey to gross distortions and phobias. So this obsessiveness, I think, is definitely something that I hear INTJs talk about, getting obsessed with their ideas when they're unhealthy. And I think that comes being way too much in NI and way in FI. I think FI is very idealistic in its ideas and can be very extreme, especially with morals. A level healthier, level 7, become reclusive and isolated. So to me that sounds like a bad loop. You're not very extroverted. Eccentric and nihilistic, highly unstable and fearful of aggressions. They reject and repulse others and all social attachments. So introverted to the max, which I talk about in my other videos. It's unhealthy to be too introverted. Okay, so those are 3 unhealthy levels. Now we're in kind of the medium levels, up to level 6. Begin to take an antagonistic stance toward anything which would interfere with their inner world and personal vision. That sounds like NI when you talk about your visions, especially I think it sounds like FI a little bit too when you talk about things that are highly personal to you. It's like your personal vision, it's like mine, it's like my protective thing, cynical and argumentative. So I think a lot of this lower level Enneagram 5 stuff sounds like NI and FI used in a bad relationship with each other. Level 5, increasingly detached, which, you know, like we say, like being objective is good and detached is good, but so increasingly detached as they become involved with complicated ideas or imaginary worlds. And so I think that could be a strength to deal with complicated ideas, but like all this is saying, none of this is in the real world. And it says become preoccupied with their visions and interpretations rather than reality. So this is when you have no SE to balance you out. You are all NI, probably with this FI. You've not talked to anyone. So your ideas get further and further and further away from reality. Maybe more complicated and interesting, but less valuable. Fascinated by offbeat, esoteric subjects, even those involving dark and disturbing elements. To me, that sounds like FI. Detached from the practical world, a disembodied mind, although high-strung and intense. So yeah, this disembodied mind thing is something that comes up a lot with the Enneagram 5. And when we have such low SE, and if we do not work on it, we become just this floating head of NI, we're just obsessed with NI, disembodied mind. And then high strung and intense, that sounds like FI to me, very emotional, get very obsessed with ideas and like unwilling to let those go. Very protective over them. Up a level, level 4, this is the top of the average levels. Begin conceptualizing and fine-tuning everything before acting. So now just now at level 4, there's some action involved here, but we're conceptualizing and fine-tuning everything first, and it probably takes a long time. Working things out in their minds, model building, preparing, practicing, and gathering more resources, studious, acquiring technique, become specialized and often intellectual, often challenging, accepted ways of doing things. So that's the first level, I think, where we actually have a lot better sort of actions going on here. Studious, challenging accepted ways of doing things, intellectual, I think this is a lot better. Practicing, that indicates that you're actually doing something. So I think that's actually a much better level. It does indicate that you are going to work towards something, and that you are going to take action eventually. It's kind of the whole done is better than perfect. I feel like TE is like done is better than perfect, but FI is like perfect is better than done. Okay, up in the healthy levels. Okay, level 3. Attain skillful mastery of whatever interests them. It's like a skillful, you're developing a skill, doing something nice. Excited by knowledge. This is the first time where we actually see an emotion anywhere in here that's happy. It's not high strung, it's not angry, it's not obsessed, but it's actually a good emotion. So excited by knowledge. So I think that's developing the good side of FI, finally a good emotion. Also probably SE, I associate excitement with SE. Excited by knowledge, often become an expert in some field. Innovative and inventive. Inventive, you're creating something, producing something, doing something. I would say using TE, producing something extremely valuable. So yeah, as soon as we get into creation or production, this is when you're getting to some real healthy TE. You're using TE to take your conceptualizations, turn them into reality, and then you're using SE to actually like physically get it done. And then if you're using FI in a good way, you can get excited about that project and it can match your true vision and like the values that you want to accomplish in your life. Still highly independent, idiosyncratic, and whimsical. So still independent, but we're moving from the word isolated to independent. Up to level 2, observe everything with extraordinary perceptiveness and insight. Most mentally alert, curious, searching intelligence, nothing escapes their notice. Foresight and prediction, able to concentrate, become engrossed in what has caught their attention. If you have good foresight and prediction abilities, that means that you're not completely detached from reality. So we've moved from being completely detached from reality to now actually having good foresight skills, and it's not just paranoia. Up to the healthiest level, at their best, become visionaries, broadly comprehending the world while penetrating it profoundly. So this is understanding the world and penetrating it profoundly, so you're involved in it while deeply understanding it. Open-minded, taking things in whole in their true context, make pioneering discoveries, and find entirely new ways of doing and perceiving things. So not only do you do things, you're not just a disembodied mind, but now you're finding the best way to do things. I think that's good. So I think that models a lot of what INTJs do, and like a lot, this word like become visionaries, that sounds a lot like an INTJ description at their best. Open-minded, taking things in as a whole, that sounds like an INTJ description to me. So just like as a theme, they go from, this is what I've highlighted, seeking oblivion, break with reality, obsessed, cynical, argumentative, antagonistic toward anything that would interfere with their inner world and personal vision, and being a disembodied mind, to now participating in the world, fine-tuning and acting, excited by knowledge, producing things extremely valuable, visionaries, broadly comprehending the world. So you would think that by spending so much time alone, you would think that that's where you, or at least that's what I would think. When I spend so much time alone, I feel like I can broadly comprehend the world. I can do research, I can go on the internet, I can read, and that's how I can broadly comprehend the world. But I will be doing something really mundane to me, and then I'll have like a really profound, to me it feels very profound revelation is what it feels like. Much more so than when I was reading, and it seems really backwards, but that's how I found it to actually happen. So you go from like not being involved in the world to being scared of it, and just being a mind, like you're a disembodied mind, you're just not involved in the world at all, to then actually truly comprehending the world and penetrating it profoundly. So you are in it and involved in the world and understanding it deeply. So it's this shift from observing to participating. That's kind of the big Enneagram 5 thing. But another big Enneagram 5 thing is energy management. So one big struggle for Enneagram 5s is not feeling like they have enough energy, and that's why they don't go and participate in it. That's why they stay all walled up, because we feel like, and I haven't quite understood it quite yet, but apparently it's a facade and we have abounding energy. And my husband is he's an SE user, he's an ISFP, and he's the one who told me you can like make yourself feel more energy. I was like, no, you can't. He's like, yeah, you can work out, you can drink water, you can eat food. And I'm like, what? I can make myself have more energy? No, it's a tank and it depletes and that's that. And it's a very small tank. And I feel like that is a concept that really relates to INTJs because we have inferior SE. So if you think of like dominant SE users, the ESPs, they have so much energy. I have students that are ESPs and they are the ones who are shouting and they're constantly wanting to stand up. They're moving all the time. They're throwing their pencils. The ESPs are the nightmare in the classroom. I feel bad for them, honestly. But as a teacher, I'm like, they're not what I would like to be. They're awful to teach. I feel bad for them. School's not designed for them. But we are kind of like the opposite of that. So we have inferior SE, and it means that we do not have that energy. We do not want to be moving. I mean, I sit in my house, my husband will leave, come back 5 hours later, and I have not moved. I haven't drank any water. I haven't gone to the bathroom. I have not moved. I'm still sitting there on the computer or reading after 5 hours. And that's not great for me. But a lot of it is that I just feel energized in my mind and I feel like I have no energy in my body. So I don't want to do that. But according to personal growth using cognitive functions and also the Enneagram, we have to move toward participating in the world, and that will help us generate more energy, even though it doesn't seem like it. And the more we participate in SE, the more energy we will actually have. I don't know if I believe it. I do think that for some personality types, that for some individuals, that the Enneagram might be more helpful than Myers-Briggs. For some, Myers-Briggs might be more helpful. For me, I personally have found Myers-Briggs more helpful for growth. I kind of use all of the systems to gain little pieces of information, but I just like the framework that cognitive functions provides better. Yeah, so a little bit on my thoughts on the Enneagram. I have never really personally dove in and really used it a lot for personal growth. I know a lot about it. I have read Beatrice Chestnut's book, and she just talks about how she really feels like there are more than 9 types. She feels like there's 27 once you factor in the subtypes, which I think is very interesting, and it gets a lot more specific when you factor in the subtypes. However, like in her book, there's not very much information on each subtype. There's like a couple paragraphs on each subtype. So that's why it's hard. So I think it could be better later on, but currently with the amount of information that's out there, I don't feel like I can learn very much. And I do like the system of going with or against the arrow, but the rest of it, like if you just give me 5 bullet points, I feel like I like it as well as I like the idea of a system. And also I just feel like there are some individuals that the Enneagram works better for. Like for example, for my husband, he's an ISFP and an Enneagram 9. I felt like we learned a lot more about him and he started growing a lot more once we figured out he was an Enneagram 9 than we did from working on cognitive functions with him. I think that's just him as an individual. There are some people, like my dad, who I cannot find a best fit Enneagram type, and I don't know if that means it's an incomplete system or what it means, but there are some people that I feel like the Enneagram really nails on the head, and some people that just, I can't find a type for them. I don't know like how they would even grow from it. And people like me, I do feel like it's very accurate. Like I feel like all the information on Enneagram 5 is accurate. Their model for growth isn't as good as I would like it to be. It's not as robust and developed as I would like it to be. And it basically is saying the same things as Myers-Briggs, so it didn't add a lot more to my life than Myers-Briggs had already given me. So that's kind of my personal thoughts on Enneagram. But I do like the concept of the arrows. The levels of health are interesting. Yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts. Yeah, so thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.